Sleep to Gentle Buddhist Stories for Acceptance. Fall asleep to Zen Buddhism. Close your eyes for a moment. Take a breath. Let your shoulders drop. Feel the weight of your body settling into wherever you are right now. And as you settle, consider this. What if the key to peace isn't found in fighting against reality, but in learning to embrace it? What if acceptance isn't weakness, but the greatest strength a human being can cultivate? Tonight, we are going to journey through some of the most profound and beautiful stories ever told. Stories that have been passed down for over 2,500 years. Stories from the Buddhist tradition that speak directly to the human heart about letting go, about accepting what is, and about finding peace in the midst of life's inevitable storms. These are not just stories. They are medicine for the soul. They are maps for navigating the landscape of human suffering. And they are invitations to discover a different way of being in this world. So let your breathing slow. Let your mind begin to quiet. And let these ancient tales wash over you like gentle waves on a peaceful shore. There is nothing you need to do right now except listen. Nothing you need to fix. Nothing you need to figure out. Just be here, in this moment, and let the wisdom of these stories find its way into your heart. We begin our journey in ancient India, in a time when a prince named Siddhartha Gautama sat beneath a tree and vowed not to move until he had found the answer to human suffering. What happened that night under the Bodhi tree would change the course of human history. But more than that, it offers us a profound teaching about the nature of acceptance and the path to inner freedom. Picture this scene with me. It is nightfall. The air is warm and still. Fireflies dance in the darkness beyond the trees' spreading branches. A young man sits in perfect stillness, his legs crossed, his spine straight, his eyes closed. He has given up everything, his kingdom, his wealth, his wife and child, his very identity as a prince, all in search of an answer to the question that burned in his heart. Why do human beings suffer, and how can that suffering end? For 6 years he had wandered. He had studied with the greatest teachers of his time. He had practiced the most extreme forms of asceticism until his body was reduced to skin and bones. He had tried everything that the spiritual seekers of his era believed would lead to liberation. And yet the answer continued to elude him. Now, sitting beneath this fig tree on the outskirts of the town of Gaya, he had made a different kind of vow. He would sit here, he decided, until either he found the truth or his body gave out. There would be no more running, no more seeking, no more trying to escape from the human condition. He would face reality directly, whatever it might reveal. And that is when Mara appeared. Mara, the name itself means destruction. In Buddhist tradition, Mara is sometimes described as a demon, sometimes as a god of the sensory realm, and sometimes as a personification of the forces within our own minds that keep us trapped in cycles of suffering. Perhaps he is all of these things at once. What matters for our purposes tonight is what Mara represents. Every obstacle to acceptance, every voice that tells us we cannot find peace, every fear and desire that pulls us away from the present moment. Mara knew that if Siddhartha succeeded in his quest, something fundamental would shift. A light would come into the world that would offer human beings a way out of the darkness of their confusion. And so Mara marshaled all his forces to stop the ascetic before he could reach his goal. First came the armies. In some versions of the story, Mara appeared at the head of a vast host of demons, creatures of nightmare and shadow, wielding weapons of every description. They surrounded the tree where Siddhartha sat, their faces twisted with rage, their voices raised in terrible war cries. They hurled stones and spears, arrows and flames, at the solitary figure beneath the branches. But something remarkable happened. As each weapon approached Siddhartha, it transformed. Stones became flower petals drifting on the wind. Arrows became blossoms floating gently to the ground. Fire became soft light. The young ascetic did not flinch. He did not flee. He simply sat in the deep stillness he had cultivated, accepting whatever came, and in that acceptance, the very nature of what approached him was transformed. This is the first teaching for us tonight. When we resist reality, when we fight against what is happening, we give the forces that trouble us their power. The stones remain stones. The arrows pierce us. The fire burns. But when we accept, when we stop running from our experience and simply allow it to be what it is, something shifts. The weapons lose their power. The demons cannot harm us. Not because the difficulties of life disappear, but because our relationship to them has fundamentally changed. When the armies failed, Mara tried a different approach. He sent his 3 daughters to tempt Siddhartha. Their names were Tanha, Arati, and Raga, which translate roughly as craving, aversion, and passion. They came to the tree in forms of extraordinary beauty, dancing and singing, offering the young ascetic every pleasure the world could provide. They promised him power and wealth, sensory delights beyond imagining, the fulfillment of every desire he had ever known. But Siddhartha did not rise to take the bait. He recognized these temptations for what they were, not pathways to happiness, but traps that would only lead to more suffering. He had already lived as a prince. He had already tasted the pleasures of wealth and power, and he had discovered that these things could not bring lasting peace. To chase after them again would be to turn back on the path, to give up his quest just when the answer was within reach. And so he simply sat. He did not argue with the daughters of Mara. He did not struggle against his desires. He merely observed them arising and passing away, like clouds crossing the sky of his awareness. He accepted that craving would come, that aversion would come, that passion would come. These are part of the human experience, but he did not have to be controlled by them. He could watch them come, and he could watch them go. When seduction failed, Mara himself appeared before Siddhartha, the Lord of Death, the ruler of the realm of desire, the great tempter who had never been defeated. And he asked Siddhartha a question that cuts to the heart of human doubt. Who do you think you are? By what right? Mara demanded. Do you sit in this seat of enlightenment? Who are you to claim such a thing? What makes you worthy? Who will speak for you? And at this moment, we see the deepest teaching of the story. Siddhartha did not argue. He did not defend himself. He did not try to prove his worthiness through words or deeds. Instead, he simply reached down and touched the earth. That gesture is depicted in countless Buddhist statues around the world, the right hand reaching down to touch the ground. It is called the Bhumisparsha Mudra, the earth-touching gesture. And with that simple movement, Siddhartha called upon the earth itself to be his witness. The earth, according to the story, shook in response. A great trembling ran through the ground, and a voice rose up saying, I bear witness. Not the voice of gods or kings or any worldly authority, but the voice of reality itself, of the ground of being, of the present moment in all its inescapable truth. Mara's army scattered. His daughters disappeared. The great tempter himself was forced to acknowledge defeat. And as the morning star rose in the sky, Siddhartha Gautama opened his eyes in a new way. He had become the Buddha, the awakened one. He had found what he was looking for, and the answer turned out to be so simple that it had been hiding in plain sight all along. The path to freedom from suffering is not found in fighting against reality. It is not found in acquiring more pleasures or avoiding all pain. It is not found in becoming someone special or proving our worth to others. It is found in acceptance, in touching the earth, in being fully present with what is, without resistance, without craving, without aversion. This does not mean being passive or giving up. Siddhartha's quest required tremendous courage and determination. But it means recognizing that true peace comes from making friends with reality rather than warring against it. It means understanding that every moment, exactly as it is, contains the possibility of awakening. As you lie here tonight, letting sleep slowly approach, consider what demons you have been fighting. What armies have you been trying to defeat? What temptations have been pulling you in directions that lead only to more suffering? And what would happen if, just for tonight, you simply touched the earth? If you accepted things as they are, right here, right now, you do not need anyone else to witness your worthiness. The earth itself knows you. The present moment holds you. And in that holding, there is a peace that no demon can disturb. Let us continue our journey with another story. This one speaks directly to one of the hardest things any human being can face: the loss of someone we love. In the time of the Buddha, there lived a young woman named Kisa Gautami. Her name means thin Gautami, and she came from a poor family who could barely afford to feed themselves. When she married into a wealthy household, she was treated with disdain by her new in-laws because of her humble origins. She was the outsider, the poor relation who did not quite belong. But then she gave birth to a son, and suddenly everything changed. Her child brought her acceptance and joy that she had never known. Her in-laws began to treat her with respect. She had given them an heir, and in that gift, she had finally found her place. You can imagine how much she loved that child. He was everything to her: her hope, her happiness, her reason for being. She poured all the love she had into that small, precious life. And then, as children sometimes did in those days of limited medicine and hard living, the little boy fell ill. Despite everything Kisa Gautami did, despite her prayers and her tears and her desperate attempts to save him, the child died. The grief that descended upon her was total. It was as if the world itself had ended. She could not accept what had happened. She refused to believe that her son was truly gone. In her anguish, she began carrying the child's lifeless body from house to house, begging anyone she met for medicine that could bring him back to life. "Please," she cried to her neighbors, to strangers, to anyone who would listen. "Please, my son is sick. Do you have any medicine that can help him? Do you know anyone who can heal him?" The people she encountered did not know what to say. Some turned away in discomfort. Others tried gently to tell her that the child was dead, that there was no medicine that could help him now. But Kisa Gautami would not hear it. She could not hear it. The truth was too terrible to accept. Finally, an old man took pity on her. He could see that she was not ready to hear the hard truth directly. And so he said, "I know of someone who might be able to help you. There is a teacher called the Buddha who is staying at the Jetavana monastery. Go to him. Perhaps he has the medicine you seek." Kisa Gautami hurried to find the Buddha. She fell at his feet, still clutching the body of her son, and begged him for medicine. Now, the Buddha could have told her directly that her son was dead, that there was no medicine in the world that could bring him back, that she needed to accept her loss and move forward. But he understood that she was not yet ready to hear this. Sometimes the truth, delivered too bluntly, cannot penetrate a heart that is armored with grief. The wisdom must find another way in. And so the Buddha said something that seemed, at first, to offer hope. "I can help you," he told her. "But to make the medicine, I need a single ingredient. I need a mustard seed." Kisa Gautami's face lit up. A mustard seed. That was such a simple thing. Every household had mustard seeds. She could find one easily and bring it back to the Buddha, and he would make the medicine, and her son would live again. "But there is one condition," the Buddha continued. "The mustard seed must come from a house where no one has ever died. Not a parent, not a spouse, not a child, not a servant. You must find a house that has never known death." Kisa Gautami thanked him profusely and set off on her search, certain that she would soon find what she needed. She went to the first house and knocked on the door. A kind woman answered and readily offered to give her mustard seeds. But when Kisa Gautami asked if anyone had ever died in that house, the woman's face grew sad. "Oh yes," she said. "My mother passed away last year. We miss her terribly. Kisagatami moved on to the next house. The same scene repeated. Yes, they had mustard seeds. Yes, someone had died. A husband struck down in his prime. A child taken by fever. A grandmother surrendered to old age. House after house, the story was the same. Everyone was willing to help. No one had been spared. Death had visited every doorway in the city. It was not a matter of rich or poor, young or old, virtuous or wicked. Death came to all. As the day wore on and Kisagatami continued her search, something began to shift within her. At each house, she heard stories of loss. She saw other faces marked by grief. She began to realize that she was not alone in her suffering. Every family she encountered had their own tale of death and mourning. The butcher had lost his father. The merchant had lost a son. The elderly woman in the house at the corner had outlived 2 husbands and 3 of her children. The young couple just starting their lives together had already buried a stillborn infant. Grief, Kisagatami began to understand, was not something that had been specially reserved for her. It was the common inheritance of all human beings. It was woven into the fabric of life itself. By evening, she had been to every house in the city. She had not found a single one that death had not touched. And in that searching, the hard truth that she had been unable to accept when delivered as words had slowly made its way into her heart. Her son was dead. He was not coming back. No medicine, no magic, no amount of desperate wishing could change that fact. Death was real, and it came for everyone. But here is the remarkable thing. When Kisagatami finally accepted this truth, she did not fall into despair. Instead, something released in her. The frantic searching stopped. The denial gave way to a grief that was clean and clear, a grief that could be felt and honored and eventually integrated into her life. She carried her son's body, one last time, to the cemetery. She buried him properly, with love and with tears, but also with acceptance. And then she walked back through the streets, now so different in her eyes, to where the Buddha was staying. "Did you find the mustard seed?" the Buddha asked, though of course he already knew the answer. "No, Lord," she said. "I did not. I searched everywhere, but there is no house that death has not visited. I understand now. Death is not something that happened only to me. It is the way of all living things." The Buddha nodded and spoke to her then about the nature of life and death, about impermanence, about the suffering that comes from clinging to what cannot stay. Kisagatami listened with a heart that was finally open, finally ready to receive the teaching. She asked to be ordained as a nun and spent the rest of her life practicing the path that the Buddha taught. She found peace, not by denying her loss, but by accepting it. Not by pretending that death does not hurt, but by recognizing that it is part of the human journey that we all share. This story has been told for thousands of years because it speaks to something universal. We all lose people we love. We all face moments when the reality of impermanence crashes into our lives with terrible force. And our first instinct, like Kisagatami's, is often to refuse. To search frantically for some way to undo what has happened. To carry our grief from door to door, hoping someone will have the magic cure. But healing comes, the story tells us, not through finding a house that death has never touched. It comes through recognizing that we are not alone. That our pain, as intense as it feels, is part of the shared human experience. That others have walked this road before us and have found their way through. Acceptance does not mean that we stop loving the one we have lost. Kisagatami never stopped loving her son. Acceptance means that we stop fighting against reality. We stop demanding that the universe be different than it is. We stop exhausting ourselves in futile searches for mustard seeds that do not exist. And in that acceptance, paradoxically, we find space to grieve properly. We find connection with others who understand. We find the possibility of peace, not despite our loss, but somehow woven through it. As you rest tonight, perhaps there are losses you are still carrying. Perhaps there are deaths, literal or metaphorical, that you have not yet fully accepted. Loved ones who have passed, relationships that have ended, dreams that did not come true, versions of yourself that no longer exist. You do not need to force acceptance. Kisagatami could not accept her son's death through an act of will. She had to go on her journey, house by house, story by story, until the truth gradually made its way in. But perhaps tonight, as you lie here in the darkness, you can let one small seed of acceptance begin to sprout. You are not alone in your grief. Whatever you have lost, others have lost something similar. The house untouched by sorrow does not exist. And there is a strange comfort in that, a comfort that does not take away the pain, but somehow makes it bearable. We are all walking this path together, carrying our losses, learning to let go. Let us turn now to another kind of story. This one comes from the Taoist tradition, but has been embraced by Zen Buddhism for the powerful lesson it teaches about anger and the practice of acceptance. Imagine a monk who has retreated to a quiet lake to meditate. The day is calm. The water is still. He pushes his small boat out from the shore and finds a peaceful spot in the middle of the lake, where he can sit in solitude and let his mind settle into stillness. He closes his eyes. His breathing slows. The gentle rocking of the boat becomes a kind of cradle, supporting his practice. Thoughts arise and pass, like ripples spreading across the surface of the water. He sinks deeper into meditation. And then, suddenly, something strikes his boat with a jolt. The monk's eyes fly open. His meditation is shattered. Irritation rises in his chest. Who has disturbed his practice? What careless boatman has crashed into him? He turns, ready to unleash his frustration on the offender. But there is no one there. The boat that struck him is empty. It must have come loose from its mooring somewhere along the shore and drifted out into the lake until it bumped into his own vessel. There is no careless boatman to blame. There is no target for his anger. Just an empty boat, floating on the water, innocent of any intention. And in that moment, the monk has a profound realization. The anger was already in him. It was not created by the other boat. It was not caused by an external event. It was living inside him, waiting for an excuse to emerge. The bump of the boat against his own was merely the trigger. But the trigger is not the same as the cause. If another person had been in that boat, the monk would have directed his anger at them. He would have blamed them for his disturbed meditation, for his ruined morning, for his upset state of mind. He would have made them the villain in a story of his own victimization. But with no one to blame, where does the anger go? It has nowhere to attach itself. It simply rises, hangs in the air for a moment, and then dissolves back into the lake of the monk's consciousness. From that day forward, the story tells us, whenever the monk encountered a person or situation that provoked his anger, he reminded himself, the other person is merely an empty boat. The anger is within me. This is a teaching that cuts against some of our deepest assumptions about how emotions work. We believe, most of us, that other people make us angry. We believe that external events cause our internal states. Someone does something wrong, and therefore we are justified in our outrage. Something happens that we don't like, and therefore we have no choice but to be upset. But the empty boat suggests otherwise. It suggests that anger, and indeed all of our difficult emotions, live within us. They are not injected from outside. They are not created by circumstances. They arise from the depths of our own minds, triggered perhaps by external events, but belonging entirely to us. This is not a teaching meant to make us feel guilty or ashamed of our emotions. The monk on the lake was not a bad person for feeling anger when his meditation was disturbed. That is a natural human response. The point is not to never feel anger, but to recognize where it actually comes from. And that recognition changes everything. When we believe that our anger is caused by others, we are powerless. We are at the mercy of everyone we encounter. If they behave in ways we don't like, we must be upset. If they are rude or careless or inconsiderate, we have no choice but to react. We are puppets, and they are pulling our strings. But when we recognize that the anger is ours, that it lives within us, that the empty boat has no power to create anything that was not already there, we reclaim our freedom. We can choose how to respond. We can let the anger rise and fall without being swept away by it. We can recognize the trigger without being controlled by it. This does not mean becoming passive or never standing up for ourselves. The monk might still choose to paddle over to the shore and tie up the loose boat so it doesn't drift into anyone else. We might still choose to address problematic behavior in others, to set boundaries, to advocate for change. But we can do so from a place of clarity rather than reactivity. We can respond rather than react. The ancient Chinese sage Chuang Tzu, who told an earlier version of this parable, wrote, "If a man is crossing a river and an empty boat collides with his own skiff, even though he be a bad-tempered man, he will not become very angry. But if he sees a man in the boat, he will shout at him to steer clear. If the shout is not heard, he will shout again and yet again and begin cursing. And all because there is somebody in the boat. Yet if the boat were empty, he would not be shouting and not angry. If you can empty your own boat crossing the river of the world, no one will oppose you. No one will seek to harm you. If you can empty your own boat." What a powerful phrase. It does not mean becoming no one, having no self, no preferences, no responses to the world. It means letting go of the tight grip of ego that makes everything personal. It means recognizing that most of what disturbs us has very little to do with us at all. The person who cuts us off in traffic is not making a statement about our worth. They are probably just running late, or distracted, or dealing with their own empty boats of anxiety and pressure. The family member who says something hurtful is not primarily attacking us. They are expressing their own pain, their own frustrations, their own accumulated hurts that have nothing to do with this moment or this conversation. When we empty our own boat, we can see this clearly. We can respond to the actual situation rather than to the story we are telling ourselves about the situation. We can meet each moment fresh, without carrying forward all the accumulated grievances and sensitivities of a lifetime. Tonight, as you rest, consider what boats have been bumping into yours. What people or situations have been triggering your anger, your frustration, your sense of being wronged. And what would it be like to see them as empty boats? Not to deny the reality of the collision, not to pretend that it didn't hurt, but to recognize that the disturbance you feel is not coming from outside. It is arising from within your own experience. The boat is empty. The anger is yours. And because it is yours, you have some say in what happens next. This theme of letting go leads us naturally to another beloved Zen story, one that is told in monasteries and meditation centers around the world. It is the story of two monks and a woman, and it teaches us something profound about what we choose to carry. Two monks were traveling together on a journey. One was old and had practiced for many years. The other was young, earnest in his dedication, but still learning the ways of the path. In their tradition, monks had taken vows that included not touching women. This was not out of any belief that women were impure or dangerous, but simply as part of the discipline of monastic life, a boundary that helped them maintain their focus on spiritual practice. The two monks came to a river. The water was high from recent rains, and the current was swift. Standing at the water's edge was a young woman in fine clothes, clearly distressed. She needed to cross the river, but the water was too deep and the current too strong for her to manage on her own. The young monk glanced at her, remembered his vows, and began to walk into the river. He would cross by himself and continue on his way. But the older monk did something unexpected. Without a word, he walked over to the woman, picked her up in his arms, waded through the rushing water, and set her down safely on the other side. Then he continued on his journey. The young monk was astonished. He was scandalized. He could not believe what he had just witnessed. A senior monk, a respected practitioner, had just broken one of the fundamental rules of their order. He had touched a woman. He had picked her up and carried her. How could he? What did this mean? But the young monk said nothing. He just followed his elder, his mind churning with questions and judgments. An hour passed. The two monks walked in silence. The young monk kept glancing at his companion, his disapproval growing with each step. How could the older monk be so calm? Did he not realize what he had done? Was he not ashamed? 2 hours passed. Then 3. The young monk's agitation only intensified. The incident replayed in his mind over and over. He constructed arguments, accusations, elaborate moral frameworks. He judged his elder and found him wanting. He compared his own righteous adherence to the rules with the other monk's flagrant violation. Finally, as evening approached and they neared the monastery where they would spend the night, the young monk could contain himself no longer. He blurted out, "How could you do that? We are monks. We have taken vows not to touch women. And you just picked her up and carried her across the river. How could you?" The older monk stopped walking. He turned to his companion with a gentle smile. "I put her down on the other side of the river hours ago," he said. "Why are you still carrying her?" This simple question contains a teaching that could occupy a lifetime of contemplation. Why are we still carrying things that we could have put down long ago? The older monk understood something that the younger monk had not yet learned. The rules of the order were important, but they existed for a reason: to help practitioners cultivate clarity and freedom. When a situation arose that called for compassion, for basic human kindness, the spirit of the rules was better served by helping someone in need than by rigidly adhering to the letter of the law while another person suffered. But more importantly, when the situation was over, it was over. The older monk helped the woman across the river. He set her down. He continued on his journey. The encounter did not define him. It did not burden him. It was one moment among countless moments, arising and passing away. The younger monk, on the other hand, was still carrying the woman hours later. Not physically, of course, but mentally, emotionally. He had not put her down. He had picked up the incident and made it into a heavy burden that he hauled along with him, mile after mile. His attachment was not to the woman herself, but to his judgment about what had happened, to his sense of moral superiority, to his certainty that he was right and his elder was wrong. Which monk, the story invites us to ask, was really burdened by the woman? We do this all the time, don't we? We carry things that happened years ago as if they happened this morning. We replay old arguments, old hurts, old grievances, giving them the same emotional charge they had when they first occurred. We construct cases against people who wronged us, rehearsing the evidence, building the prosecution, keeping the trial running long after any verdict could matter. We carry disappointments about how our lives turned out, comparing our reality to the fantasy of what we thought would happen. We carry shame about things we did in the past, as if dragging that weight around somehow makes amends. We carry fears about the future, treating imagined catastrophes as if they were already happening. And all of this carrying exhausts us. It weighs us down. It makes the journey so much harder than it needs to be. The older monk's teaching is not that we should never have opinions or judgments. The young monk was not wrong that the rules existed and that his elder had technically broken them. But there is a difference between noting something and carrying it. There is a difference between responding to a moment and being trapped by it. When something happens that bothers us, we can acknowledge it. We can feel our response. We can even take action if action is warranted. But then we can set it down. We can cross to the other side of the river and continue on our way, unburdened. This is the practice of letting go, not pretending that nothing happened, not repressing our feelings, but recognizing that the moment has passed and that our continued carrying of it serves no one, least of all ourselves. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, you might ask yourself, what am I still carrying? What did I pick up long ago that I never put down? What old grievances, old wounds, old judgments have I been hauling across mile after mile of my life? And you might experiment with setting one of them down, just for tonight, just to see what it feels like to cross the river without that weight. You can always pick it back up tomorrow if you really want to, but you might discover that you don't. You might discover that the freedom of empty hands is something you want to keep. Sleep is itself a kind of letting go. Every night, we release our grip on the day. We surrender our waking consciousness. We trust the darkness to hold us until morning. Perhaps tonight, you can let sleep carry away not just the day, but some of what you've been carrying for much longer. Perhaps you can wake tomorrow a little lighter, a little more free. We have been traveling through the gentle landscape of Buddhist stories, letting their wisdom settle into our hearts like seeds finding fertile soil. Let us continue now with one of the most fundamental teachings of the Buddha himself, a framework for understanding acceptance that has guided countless practitioners for millennia. The Buddha called these teachings the Four Noble Truths. And while the word truths might suggest something abstract or philosophical, these are actually intensely practical observations about how human beings suffer and how that suffering can come to an end. The first noble truth is simply this: life involves suffering. Now, this might sound pessimistic at first, but the Buddha was not being negative. He was being honest. He was acknowledging what every human being already knows at some level, but often tries to deny or escape. Life involves suffering. It involves physical pain. It involves emotional hurt. It involves disappointment and loss and frustration and fear. We get sick. We age. We watch the people we love struggle and fail and eventually die. We face our own mortality. We don't always get what we want, and we often get what we don't want. This is not a complaint about how things should be different. It is an observation about how things are. The sky is blue. Water flows downhill. Life involves suffering, and there is a strange relief in this acknowledgement. How much energy do we spend trying to pretend that suffering doesn't exist, or shouldn't exist, or wouldn't exist if only we or others did things differently? How much of our struggle comes from fighting against the basic reality of the human condition? The first noble truth invites us to stop fighting, to accept that suffering is part of the package, not to resign ourselves to misery, but to drop the added layer of suffering that comes from thinking things should be other than they are. Yes, you will sometimes feel pain. Yes, you will sometimes feel sad. Yes, you will face losses and setbacks and moments of despair. This is not a punishment. This is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. This is what it means to be alive. When we accept this truth, something interesting happens. The suffering doesn't necessarily decrease, but our resistance to it softens. And that resistance, that constant battle against reality, is often what makes our pain feel unbearable. The pain itself we can usually handle. It's the fighting against the pain, the insistence that it shouldn't be happening, that exhausts us. The second noble truth offers a diagnosis. Suffering arises from craving and attachment. Now, this might seem to contradict the first truth. If suffering is just part of life, how can it arise from something specific? But the Buddha is distinguishing here between pain and suffering. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is what we add to pain through our relationship to it. When we crave things to be different than they are, we suffer. When we attach ourselves to outcomes, to possessions, to people, to ideas about how our lives should unfold, we set ourselves up for disappointment. When we grasp at pleasure and push away discomfort, we create a constant inner tension that drains us. The Buddha used the word tanha, which literally means thirst. We are always thirsting for something. For more money, more success, more love, more security. For less difficulty, less uncertainty, less conflict, less pain. This thirst is never fully satisfied, because even when we get what we want, we immediately begin wanting something else, or we start fearing that we might lose what we have. This does not mean that we should never want anything, or never try to improve our situation, or never pursue our goals. The Buddha was not teaching passivity or resignation, but he was pointing out the way that grasping, the tight grip of "I must have this" or "I cannot bear that," creates suffering beyond whatever situation we actually face. Think of it this way. You're in a river, swimming toward the shore. The water is cold, the current is strong, and you're tired. This is difficult. But if you add to that difficulty a layer of panic, of "I shouldn't be here. This is terrible. I can't do this," you make your situation much worse. You thrash and struggle. You waste energy. You might even drown, not because the river was impossible to survive, but because your mental state made it so. The third noble truth offers hope. There is an end to suffering. If suffering arises from craving and attachment, then when craving and attachment cease, so does suffering. This is not a theoretical possibility. The Buddha and countless practitioners after him have testified that it is possible to reach a state of profound peace, even in the midst of life's inevitable difficulties. This state is sometimes called nirvana, which means blowing out or extinguishing. What gets extinguished is not life or consciousness, but the flames of craving and aversion that keep us in constant agitation. What remains is a kind of clarity, a spacious awareness that can hold whatever arises without being disturbed by it. Now, for most of us, complete liberation from all suffering is a distant goal, if it is even something we aspire to. But we can taste smaller versions of it in our daily lives. Whenever we let go of needing things to be different, whenever we accept a situation we cannot change, whenever we find peace in the midst of chaos. These are moments when suffering ceases, not because our circumstances have improved, but because we have stopped fighting. The fourth noble truth provides the path. There is a way to the end of suffering. The Buddha called this the Eightfold Path, and it includes right understanding, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. We don't need to explore all of these tonight, but the essence is this. There are ways of living, ways of thinking, ways of relating to our experience that reduce suffering and cultivate peace. This path is not about perfection. It is not about becoming a different kind of person or achieving some superhuman state. It is about gradual training, about developing habits of mind and heart that serve us well. It is about waking up, bit by bit, to the way things actually are and learning to live in harmony with that reality. Acceptance is woven through all of this. Accepting that life involves suffering. Accepting that our craving causes us pain. Accepting that peace is possible. Accepting that there is work to be done. The Four Noble Truths are not a belief system to be accepted on faith. They are observations to be tested in the laboratory of your own life. So tonight, as you rest, consider this framework. Where is there suffering in your life right now? What are you craving, grasping, demanding to be different? What would it feel like to loosen that grip, even slightly? What taste of peace might be available to you, right here, in this very moment? You don't need to solve all your problems tonight. You don't need to achieve enlightenment before you fall asleep. But you might find that simply accepting where you are, simply acknowledging the suffering without adding more resistance to it, brings a measure of relief. And that relief is the beginning of the path. Let us turn now to another story, one that comes from the folk wisdom of ancient China, but has been embraced by Buddhists as a teaching about equanimity and the acceptance of uncertainty. Once upon a time, there was an old farmer who lived with his son on a small piece of land. They had a single horse, which they used to plow the fields and carry their goods to market. One day, for no apparent reason, the horse ran away. The farmer's neighbors came to offer their sympathy. "What terrible luck," they said. "Your horse has run away. How will you plow your fields now? This is a disaster." The farmer simply shrugged. "Maybe," he said. "We'll see." A few days later, the horse returned, and it brought with it 2 wild horses from the hills. Now the farmer had 3 horses instead of 1. The neighbors rushed over, this time to celebrate. "What wonderful luck," they exclaimed. "Your horse came back and brought 2 more with it. You're the richest farmer in the village now. This is fantastic." The farmer smiled gently. "Maybe," he said. "We'll see." A week later, the farmer's son was trying to train one of the wild horses. The horse threw him off, and the young man broke his leg badly. The neighbors returned with long faces. "What terrible luck," they said. "Your only son has broken his leg. Now he can't help you with the harvest. And who knows if it will heal properly. This is awful." The farmer nodded slowly. "Maybe," he said. "We'll see." The following month, the army came through the village, conscripting all the young men to fight in a distant war. Many of them would never return. But when the soldiers came to the farmer's house and saw the son with his broken leg, they passed him by. He was no use to them as a soldier. The neighbors, those who had not lost their own sons, came to congratulate the farmer. "What incredible luck," they said. "Your son's broken leg saved his life. He doesn't have to go to war. This is wonderful." And the farmer, as always, simply replied, "Maybe. We'll see." This story could go on indefinitely, and that is precisely the point. Each twist of fortune that seems like disaster contains within it the seed of something beneficial. Each stroke of luck that seems like blessing carries the possibility of future hardship. We cannot see the full picture. We cannot know where the road leads. We can only respond to what is in front of us and trust that the unfolding will make sense in the end, even if we cannot see it now. The farmer's response, "Maybe, we'll see," is not fatalism or indifference. He still cares for his horses and his son. He still works his fields and lives his life. But he has stopped labeling every event as definitively good or bad. He has stopped riding the emotional roller coaster that most of us are strapped into, swooping up with every piece of good news and plunging down with every setback. This is equanimity. This is accepting not just the events of life, but also our inability to fully understand them. This is recognizing that our judgments about what is happening to us are often premature, based on incomplete information, and subject to radical revision as the story continues to unfold. Think about events in your own life that seemed terrible at the time, but turn out to be blessings. The relationship that ended and broke your heart, which freed you to find a better partner. The job you didn't get, which led you in a different direction that proved more fulfilling. The illness that forced you to slow down and reevaluate your priorities. The failure that taught you lessons you could have learned no other way. And think about events that seemed wonderful at the time, but brought unexpected difficulties. The promotion that increased your stress and damaged your health. The lottery win that attracted false friends and created family conflicts. The achievement that satisfied you for a moment and then left you wondering, is this all there is? We cannot know. We cannot see around the corners of our lives. The farmer's wisdom is accepting this uncertainty rather than fighting against it. It is holding our judgments lightly, knowing that tomorrow might reveal a completely different picture. This does not mean that we stop caring, that we become emotionally flat, that we receive good news and bad news with the same bland indifference. The farmer probably felt relief when his son was spared from the army. He probably felt concern when the boy broke his leg. He is not a stone, but he has learned not to add his certainty to his feelings. He has learned to leave room for the future to surprise him. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, consider what events in your life you have firmly labeled as good or bad. What stories have you told yourself about what has happened to you? And what would it be like to hold those stories a little more loosely? To acknowledge that you might not have the full picture? To trust that the unfolding is still in progress? Maybe the thing you are most worried about will turn out to be a blessing. Maybe the thing you are most grateful for carries challenges you haven't yet seen. We'll see. And in the meantime, we can rest in the acceptance of not knowing, in the trust that life is larger than our judgments about it. There is another teaching from the Buddha that speaks directly to how we create our own suffering and how acceptance can free us from much of it. This teaching is sometimes called the parable of the second arrow. The Buddha once asked his student, "If a person is struck by an arrow, is it painful?" The student answered, "Yes, Lord, it is painful." The Buddha then asked, "If the person is struck by a second arrow, is that even more painful?" The student answered again, "Yes, Lord, that would be even more painful." The Buddha explained, "In life, we cannot always control the first arrow. However, the second arrow is our reaction to the first. The second arrow is optional." This teaching distinguishes between pain and suffering, between what happens to us and what we do with what happens to us. The first arrow is the inevitable difficulties of life. We get sick. We lose jobs. Relationships end. People we love die. We experience failure and disappointment and rejection. These arrows are coming, regardless of how wise or virtuous or careful we are. No one escapes the first arrows. But the second arrow is different. The second arrow is what we add to the first arrow through our mental and emotional reaction. It is the way we turn pain into suffering by resisting it, by dramatizing it, by layering stories and judgments and recriminations on top of it. You stub your toe. That is the first arrow. It hurts. But then you start berating yourself for being clumsy. You start cursing the furniture. You start complaining about how things always go wrong for you. You tell yourself this is typical of your luck, that you can never catch a break, that the universe is conspiring against you. That is the second arrow. And often, the second arrow hurts more than the first. Or consider something more serious. You receive a diagnosis of a chronic illness. That is the first arrow. There is real difficulty there, real challenge, real pain. But then you start spiraling into catastrophic thinking. You imagine the worst possible outcomes. You blame yourself for not taking better care of your health. You rage against the unfairness of it all. You spend hours reading horror stories on the internet. You push away the people who want to support you because you're too wrapped up in your own drama. That is the second arrow, and it can make a difficult situation unbearable. The Buddha is not saying that we should never have emotions about the painful events in our lives. Feeling sad when something sad happens is natural and appropriate. Feeling angry or frustrated or scared is part of being human. The first arrow legitimately hurts, and acknowledging that hurt is healthy. But there is a difference between feeling our feelings and shooting ourselves with additional arrows. There is a difference between responding to pain and creating suffering. The second arrow is optional. We do not have to shoot it. This requires a kind of mindful awareness, a pause between the first arrow and our reaction to it. In that pause, we have a choice. We can notice what is happening. We can feel the pain without adding a story to it. We can accept the reality of the situation without layering judgments and projections on top of it. This hurts, we can say. Full stop. Not, this hurts, and it shouldn't, and it's not fair, and I can't stand it, and it's going to ruin everything. Just, this hurts. That acknowledgement is enough. That is acceptance. And from that place of acceptance, we can often find resources that were hidden when we were too busy shooting second arrows to notice them. We can find resilience we didn't know we had. We can find support from others. We can find meaning even in difficulty. We can find our way forward. The second arrow often takes the form of thoughts like these. This shouldn't be happening, but it is happening. Reality has already occurred. Arguing with what has already happened is exhausting and futile. I can't handle this. But you are handling it, right now, in this moment. You are still here, still breathing, still reading or listening or existing. You don't need to handle the imagined future. You only need to handle this moment. This is the worst thing ever. But is it really? Compared to all the suffering in the world, in human history, is this truly the worst? The mind tends to dramatize, to inflate, to make everything seem more dire than it actually is. I deserve better. Maybe you do. But right now, this is what is. Focusing on what you deserve takes you out of the present and into a world of grievance that helps no one. These thoughts are the second arrows, and noticing them as they arise, labeling them as second arrows, can help us put them down before they cause more damage. Tonight, as you lie here, you might notice some second arrows flying through your mind. Worries about tomorrow, regrets about yesterday, stories about who you are and how the world works that add unnecessary suffering to whatever challenges you face. And you might experiment with catching those arrows mid-flight. That's a second arrow. I don't have to let that one land. You might come back to just this moment, just this breath, just the simple reality of lying here in the darkness, letting go of the day. The first arrow of being tired, of having faced whatever difficulties the day brought, is enough. You don't need to add more. Rest in acceptance. Rest in the simple acknowledgement of what is, without needing to add commentary, without needing to shoot additional arrows. The first arrows have already done their work. Let them be, and let yourself be healed. We have been exploring stories of acceptance, of letting go, of finding peace with what is. Now let us turn to a teaching that is in some ways the foundation of all the others, the practice of beginner's mind. There is a famous Zen story about a university professor who went to visit Nanin, a Zen master of the Meiji era. The professor was an expert in religious philosophy. He had studied Buddhism and many other traditions. He had opinions and theories and frameworks for understanding everything. The professor came to the master's simple home and was invited in for tea. He sat down and began to talk. He talked about what he had learned about Zen, about the subtle distinctions between different schools, about his interpretations of the scriptures, about his questions and his conclusions. Nanin listened quietly and began to prepare tea. He poured the professor's cup full and then kept pouring. The tea overflowed the cup, spilled onto the tray, dripped onto the table, ran down onto the floor. The professor watched in astonishment until he could no longer contain himself. "Stop! The cup is over full. No more will go in." Nanin stopped pouring and smiled. "Like this cup," he said, "you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" This story has been told and retold for over a century because it points to something essential about learning, about growth, about encountering wisdom. Our fullness becomes an obstacle. Our certainty blocks our progress. What we think we already know prevents us from seeing what is actually here. The cup must be empty to receive the tea. The mind must be open to receive the teaching. In Zen, this openness is called Shoshin, which translates as beginner's mind. It is the mind that approaches each moment without the burden of past experience, without the filters of expectation, without the arrogance of expertise. It is the mind of wonder and curiosity, the mind that says, "I don't know," and means it as an invitation rather than an admission of failure. Beginner's mind is not the same as ignorance. The master who taught the overflowing cup was not ignorant of Zen. He knew far more than the professor, but his knowledge had not hardened into fixed opinions. His understanding remained fluid, alive, responsive to the moment. He could teach because he was still, in some essential sense, a student. His cup was never too full. Most of us have cups that are very full indeed, full of opinions about ourselves and others, full of conclusions about how the world works, full of memories that color everything we see, full of anxieties about the future, full of judgments and preferences and demands. And all of this fullness, while it might make us feel secure, actually limits our experience. We cannot taste the tea that is being offered because we are too busy explaining why we already know what tea tastes like. We cannot receive the teaching because we are too busy demonstrating what we have already learned. Acceptance, in its deepest sense, requires emptying the cup. It requires letting go of our certainties about how things should be, how people should act, how our lives should unfold. It requires approaching each moment as if we had never experienced anything like it before, because in truth, we haven't. This moment is new. It has never occurred in the history of the universe. And if we meet it with a mind full of the past, we miss it entirely. Consider how you approach the people in your life. Your partner, your family, your friends, your colleagues. How much do you actually see them fresh in this moment? And how much do you see your accumulated ideas about them, your history with them, your expectations and grievances and assumptions? Beginner's mind invites us to look again, to see the person in front of us as if for the first time. Not to forget everything we know about them, but to hold that knowledge lightly, to allow for the possibility that they might surprise us, that they might be different from who we think they are. This is an act of acceptance. We accept that reality is larger than our ideas about it. We accept that we might be wrong, that our cup might be too full, that there might be tea being offered that we haven't yet tasted. And consider how you approach yourself. How much do you actually see who you are in this moment? And how much do you see your accumulated ideas about yourself, your history, your labels, your stories about your limitations, and your potential? Beginner's mind invites us to meet ourselves fresh as well, not to deny our past, but not to be imprisoned by it either. To recognize that in this moment, anything is possible, that the person lying here, listening to these words, drifting towards sleep, is not fixed, not finished, not defined by what has come before. This is radical acceptance, accepting the present moment as it is, without the weight of all our preconceptions, accepting ourselves and others as they are, right now, without the burden of who they have been or who we think they should be. Shunryu Suzuki, the great Zen teacher who brought these teachings to the West, wrote, "In the beginner's mind there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind there are few." Expertise is valuable. Learning is important. We need knowledge to navigate the world. But if our expertise hardens into certainty, if our learning becomes a wall rather than a window, we lose something precious. We lose the freshness of experience. We lose the ability to be surprised. We lose the humility that is the doorway to wisdom. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, consider what would it be like to empty your cup. Just for these next moments, just for this night, let go of everything you think you know. Let go of your opinions about your life, your conclusions about yourself, your certainties about tomorrow. Approach the darkness with beginner's mind, as if you had never slept before, as if this experience of letting go into unconsciousness was something entirely new. Because in some ways, it is. This night is not like any other night. This sleep will not be like any other sleep. This moment of resting, of releasing, of drifting toward dreams has never occurred before. Let your cup be empty. Let your mind be open. And let whatever arises, arise. Without judgment, without resistance, without the commentary of the expert who has done this 1,000 times before. In that emptiness, there is room for something new. In that openness, there is space for rest to find you. In that beginner's mind, there is acceptance of whatever comes. Now let us turn to one of the most beautiful and subtle teachings in the Buddhist tradition, the contemplation of impermanence, which the Japanese call mono no aware. Every spring, across Japan, people gather under the cherry trees. They spread blankets beneath the spreading branches. They bring food and drink. They sing and laugh and talk with friends and family. They watch the clouds of pink and white blossoms floating just above their heads. And they watch the petals fall. This practice is called hanami, flower viewing. And while it might seem like simply a celebration of spring, it carries a profound teaching about acceptance and the nature of life. Cherry blossoms are among the most beautiful of flowers. They burst forth in abundance, transforming the landscape with their delicate color. But their bloom is incredibly brief. Within a week or two, the petals begin to fall. They drift down like colored snow, carpeting the ground, swirling in the wind, carried away by streams and rivers. The Japanese do not mourn this brevity. They embrace it. The short-lived nature of the cherry blossom is not seen as tragic, but as essential to its beauty. If the blossoms lasted all year, they would be ordinary. They would be taken for granted. It is precisely because they are fleeting that they are precious. It is precisely because they are impermanent that they are worth gathering beneath, worth celebrating, worth watching with attentive eyes and open hearts. Mono no aware is often translated as the pathos of things or the bittersweet poignancy of things. It is an aesthetic sensibility, a way of perceiving beauty that is intertwined with the awareness of transience. The cherry blossom is beautiful not despite the fact that it will fall, but somehow because of it. The falling is part of the beauty. This teaching invites us to bring the same sensibility to all of life. Everything is like the cherry blossom. Everything is temporary. Everything arises and passes away. Our relationships, our accomplishments, our bodies, our very selves, all of it is in constant change, moving toward an end that we cannot prevent. And this, the tradition suggests, is not cause for despair. It is cause for deeper appreciation. It is cause for paying attention to what is here, right now, because it will not be here forever. It is cause for loving fully, for living wholeheartedly, knowing that each moment is precious precisely because it is unrepeatable. The Buddhist teaching of impermanence, called anicca in Pali, is one of the three fundamental characteristics of existence. Everything changes. Nothing stays the same. What is born must die. What is gathered must scatter. What rises must fall. When we resist this truth, we suffer. We try to hold on to things that cannot be held. We try to freeze the cherry blossom at the peak of its bloom. We try to stop time, to keep things as they are, to prevent the inevitable falling of the petals. And in that resistance, we miss the actual beauty of what is happening. We are so busy fighting against impermanence that we cannot appreciate the present moment. But when we accept impermanence, something shifts. We stop trying to hold on. We start being present to what is here. We find a kind of peace in the midst of constant change, the peace of a leaf floating on the stream, going where the current goes, part of the flow rather than fighting against it. This does not mean becoming passive or indifferent. The people gathered under the cherry trees are not indifferent. They are moved. They are touched by the beauty and the transience together, inseparable. Mono no aware includes deep feeling. It just includes the awareness that what we are feeling is temporary, that this moment, this gathering, this blossom will never come again in exactly this form. Think of the people you love. They are like cherry blossoms. They are here now, beautiful and alive, but they will not be here forever. What would it mean to appreciate them with the awareness of mono no aware? Not to become morbid or obsessed with their eventual absence, but to love them more fully because they are temporary, to be more present with them because this present is all we truly have. Think of your own life. It is like a cherry blossom. It has bloomed, it is blooming, it will fall. The number of springs remaining to you is finite. The number of mornings, the number of conversations, the number of moments of joy and struggle and ordinary daily living. What would it mean to receive your life with the awareness of mono no aware? To appreciate it more deeply because it is passing, to engage with it more wholeheartedly because it will not last? The great Zen poet Ikkyu, who lived in Japan in the 15th century, wrote, "Look at the cherry blossoms. Their color and scent fall with them, are gone forever. Yet mindless, the spring comes again. The spring comes again, but never the same spring, never the same blossoms. Each year is unrepeatable. Each moment is unrepeatable. And somehow, in that unrepeatable quality, there is a kind of eternity. Not the eternity of permanence, of things staying the same, but the eternity of presence, of each moment being complete in itself, lacking nothing, needing nothing to be other than it is. Tonight, as you rest, consider the impermanence of this very moment. The breath you are breathing will never be breathed again. The thoughts passing through your mind are unique, arising and dissolving like cherry petals on the wind. The body you inhabit is changing, has been changing since you were born, will continue to change until you die. And in that impermanence, there is an invitation to be here, fully, without reservation. An invitation to accept the moment as it is, without needing it to be different, without needing it to last. An invitation to find the beauty in the falling, the grace in the letting go, the peace in the release. The blossoms fall, the breath releases, the day ends, sleep comes. All of this is impermanent, and all of it is precious. All of it is worth attending to with the kind of attention we bring to flowers we know will not be here long. Let your awareness be gentle tonight. Let your heart be open to the aware of this moment. Let the falling petals of the day settle into stillness. And in that stillness, find the beauty that is available only to those who accept the truth of impermanence, the beauty of a world that is always already falling and always already renewed. We have traveled together through many stories tonight, each one offering a different window into the practice of acceptance. Now we come to one final story, perhaps the most dramatic and the most hopeful of all. It is the story of a man named Angulimala, and it speaks to the possibility of transformation that lies at the heart of Buddhist teaching. In the time of the Buddha, in the kingdom of Kosala, there lived a young man who was known by his given name of Ahimsaka, which means the harmless one. He was bright and diligent, a Brahmin's son, sent away to study with a renowned teacher. He excelled in his studies and seemed destined for a life of wisdom and virtue. But fate, or perhaps karma, had other plans. Ahimsaka's teacher had a wife who developed an attraction to the handsome young student. She made advances toward him, but Ahimsaka, true to his name and his upbringing, refused her. Humiliated and angry, the teacher's wife told her husband that Ahimsaka had made improper advances toward her. The teacher, blinded by jealousy and rage, could not bring himself to harm his student directly. Instead, he devised a cruel deception. He told Ahimsaka that to complete his education, he needed to bring an unusual payment, a garland made from 1,000 human fingers. The teacher believed this impossible and deadly task would lead to Ahimsaka's death, either at the hands of his intended victims or at the hands of the authorities who would surely hunt him down. Whether Ahimsaka was bound by tradition to fulfill his teacher's request, or whether something dark awakened in him under this terrible assignment, he became what his teacher intended to create, a monster. He took to the forest and began killing travelers who passed through. From each victim, he took a finger and added it to the garland he wore around his neck. He became known as Angulimala, which means finger garland. He became the terror of the region. Entire villages lived in fear. The king sent soldiers to hunt him, but they could not find him, or if they found him, they did not return. Mothers frightened their children into obedience by invoking his name. He was no longer a man but a demon, a force of nature to be avoided at all costs. By the time our story reaches its turning point, Angulimala had collected 999 fingers. He needed only one more to complete his grisly task. And on this day, in the forest, he saw a figure approaching, a woman traveling alone. Looking closer, He realized with shock that it was his own mother coming to find him, to beg him to stop, to try to save her son from the darkness that had consumed him. For a terrible moment, Angulimala considered making his own mother his final victim. One more finger and he would be done. What did it matter who provided it? But at that moment, another figure appeared on the path. A man in simple robes, walking calmly and alone through the most dangerous forest in the kingdom. This was the Buddha, who had seen with his divine eye what was about to happen and had come to prevent Angulimala from committing the irredeemable act of killing his own mother. Angulimala decided he would take the stranger's finger instead. He stepped out from the trees and began to pursue the walking figure. But something strange happened. No matter how fast Angulimala ran, he could not catch up to the Buddha, who continued walking at the same unhurried pace. Angulimala ran faster. Still, the Buddha remained just beyond reach. It was as if the earth itself was stretching out between them, preventing the killer from reaching his prey. Finally, exhausted and bewildered, Angulimala cried out, "Stop! Stop, traveler!" The Buddha turned, and his response has echoed through the centuries as one of the most powerful moments in Buddhist literature. "I have already stopped, Angulimala," the Buddha said. "When will you stop?" The killer stood there, catching his breath, confused. What did the man mean? He had been walking. Angulimala had seen him walking. How could he say he had stopped? The Buddha explained, "I have stopped doing harm to all living beings. I have stopped living in ignorance. I have stopped following the path of violence and suffering. But you, Angulimala, you have not stopped. You are still running down that dark path. When will you stop?" Something happened in that moment that cannot be fully explained in rational terms. The hardened murderer, the terror of the kingdom, the man who had taken 999 lives without remorse, looked into the eyes of the Buddha and saw something he had never seen before. He saw peace. He saw compassion. He saw a complete absence of fear or judgment. The Buddha was not afraid of him. The Buddha did not hate him. The Buddha saw through the monster to the human being underneath, the young student who had once been called the harmless one, the suffering soul that had become so lost. Angulimala's sword fell from his hand. Tears streamed down his face. He fell at the Buddha's feet and begged to be taught the way to end his suffering. The Buddha accepted him as a disciple. He ordained him as a monk. The finger garland was discarded. Angulimala began to practice the path that leads to liberation. But the story does not end there, and this is where the deeper teaching about acceptance comes in. Angulimala had changed. His heart had been transformed. He was no longer the killer he had been. But the world did not know this. The world only knew the terror of Angulimala, the monster in the forest, the murderer of their loved ones. When Angulimala went into the city to beg for alms, as monks must do, the people recognized him. And their response was not welcoming. They threw stones at him. They beat him with sticks. They hurled insults and curses. His bowl was smashed. His robes were torn. He returned to the monastery bleeding and broken. The Buddha did not protect him from this. He did not hide Angulimala away from the consequences of his past. He did not magically make the villagers forget what the former killer had done. Instead, he spoke these words, "Bear it, Brahmin. Bear it. You are experiencing now the results of deeds that might otherwise have caused you suffering in the deepest hells for many years. Bear it." This is acceptance at its most demanding. Angulimala had genuinely changed. He was not the person who had committed those terrible acts. But the karma of those acts was still playing out. The pain he had caused was still rippling through the world. And he had to accept the consequences, not as punishment, but as the natural unfolding of cause and effect. He did not argue. He did not defend himself. He did not insist that the villagers see who he had become rather than who he had been. He simply accepted. He bore the stones and the blows with patience. He continued his practice. He continued to transform. And gradually, Over time, the people began to see. They noticed that this monk did not retaliate. They noticed that he received their attacks with gentleness. They noticed that something had changed in him, that the terrifying presence they remembered had been replaced by something peaceful and kind. In one beautiful episode from the scriptures, Angulimala came upon a woman in the village who was having a terribly difficult childbirth. She and the baby were in danger of dying. Moved by compassion, Angulimala wanted to help, but what could a former murderer do? He went to the Buddha and asked. The Buddha told him to return to the woman and speak these words, "Sister, since I was born with the noble birth, I do not recall intentionally killing a living being. By this truth, may you and your child be safe." The noble birth refers to Angulimala's ordination as a monk, his spiritual rebirth. He could truthfully say that since that moment, he had harmed no one. And as he spoke these words, filled with the power of their truth, the woman safely delivered her child. This blessing became known as the Angulimala Parita, and it is still recited today in Buddhist communities to protect pregnant women and ensure safe childbirth. The former murderer became the patron saint of mothers and children. The hands that had taken so many lives became hands that offered healing and protection. This is the radical possibility at the heart of Buddhism. No one is beyond redemption. No past is so dark that it cannot be transformed. The practice of acceptance includes accepting ourselves, even the parts of ourselves we are most ashamed of, even the actions we most regret. Angulimala could not undo what he had done. He could not bring back the people he had killed. He could not erase the suffering he had caused, but he could accept it. He could bear the consequences. He could transform his life from that point forward. And in that transformation, he found peace. This teaching offers hope to all of us who carry regret, who are haunted by things we have done, who wonder if we can ever be forgiven, if we can ever forgive ourselves. The Buddhist teaching is not that we should excuse our harmful actions or pretend they didn't happen. Angulimala did not pretend he hadn't been a killer. He bore the stones and the insults because he knew he had earned them. The teaching is that we should accept what we have done, face the consequences honestly, and then transform. We should stop. We should begin walking a different path. We should allow the present moment to be a new beginning, even as we honor the weight of the past. If Angulimala can be redeemed, then so can we. If the finger garland murderer can become a saint, then whatever we have done, whatever we carry, whatever we hide from others and sometimes from ourselves, there is a path through it. There is always the possibility of awakening. Tonight, as you rest, consider what you have not yet accepted about yourself. What shadows do you carry? What regrets? What shame? What parts of your history do you wish you could erase? And consider what it would mean to accept these things, not to excuse them, but to stop running from them, to face them directly, to bear the consequences with patience and humility, and to begin, from this moment, to walk a different path. You are not your past. You are not your worst moments. You are a living being, capable of change, capable of growth, capable of transformation. The Buddha saw this in Angulimala, in the midst of his horror. Perhaps you can see it in yourself, in the midst of whatever difficulty you are facing. Stop. The Buddha's invitation echoes across the centuries. Stop running. Stop harming. Stop fighting against reality. And in that stopping, in that acceptance, find the possibility of peace. We have traveled far tonight, through stories of the Buddha and Mara, of Kisa Gautami and the mustard seed, of the empty boat, of the two monks and the woman. We have contemplated the Four Noble Truths, the farmer's equanimity, the second arrow, the overflowing cup, the falling cherry blossoms, and the transformation of Angulimala. Each story has offered a different facet of acceptance. Together, they form a kind of mandala, a pattern of wisdom that we can hold in our hearts as we move through our lives. Acceptance is not weakness. It is one of the greatest strengths a human being can cultivate. It takes courage to face reality without flinching, to acknowledge suffering without adding more suffering, to let go of what cannot be held, to bear the consequences of our actions with patience. Acceptance is not passivity. The Buddha was not passive. He traveled for 45 years teaching and helping others. The accepting mind does not refuse to act. It simply acts without the distortion of resistance, without the added weight of demanding that reality be different from what it is. Acceptance is not resignation. There is a subtle but crucial difference between accepting what cannot be changed and giving up hope for what can be changed. The Serenity Prayer captures this wisdom, accepting what we cannot change, finding courage to change what we can, and cultivating the wisdom to know the difference. Acceptance opens doors that fighting keeps closed. When we stop struggling against what is, we often discover resources we didn't know we had. We discover clarity we couldn't see through the storm of our resistance. We discover peace that was there all along, waiting for us to stop running so it could catch up. Tonight, as you move towards sleep, you are practicing a kind of acceptance. You are accepting the end of the day. You are accepting the need to rest. You are accepting the vulnerability of letting go, of surrendering consciousness, of trusting the darkness to hold you. Let this nightly practice of acceptance be a teacher. Let it remind you that letting go is safe, that surrendering control can be a relief rather than a defeat, that there is something larger than your grasping mind that can hold you, carry you, restore you. Sleep is a small death. Every night, the self you know dissolves into unknowing. And every morning, you rise again, refreshed, renewed, given another chance. In this rhythm, there is a teaching about the Buddhist understanding of death and rebirth, about the constant flowing of all things, about the way that letting go is always followed by beginning again. You have done enough for today. Whatever was left undone will wait for tomorrow, or perhaps it will turn out not to have been important after all. Whatever problems you faced will still be there when you wake, but you will face them with renewed energy, with clearer sight, with the wisdom that comes from rest. Accept this moment, just as it is. The darkness around you, the weight of your body on the bed, the rhythm of your breath, the thoughts that still pass through your mind, slowing now, becoming softer, less urgent. Accept all of it. You do not need to be different. You do not need to have achieved more or suffered less. You do not need to have figured everything out. Right here, right now, you are enough. You are worthy of rest. You are worthy of peace. Let the stories you have heard tonight continue to work in you as you sleep. Let them settle into the deeper layers of your consciousness, where they can germinate and grow. Dreams may carry them forward, transforming them in ways you cannot predict. You may wake tomorrow with an insight you did not have before, a release you did not know was possible, a gentleness toward yourself that has been a long time coming. Or you may simply wake rested, and that is enough too. Not every night brings revelation. Not every sleep leads to transformation. Sometimes rest is just rest, and that is perfectly good. Accept whatever comes. Before we part, remember this. You are part of a vast lineage of human beings who have struggled and suffered and sought peace. For thousands of years, people have listened to these stories, have contemplated these teachings, have practiced letting go. You are not alone in your difficulties. You are not alone in your journey toward acceptance. The Buddha sits beneath the Bodhi tree, untouched by Mara's arrows. Kisa Gautami walks from house to house, learning the universal truth of loss. The monk sits in his boat, recognizing that the anger was his own. The old farmer shrugs at fortune and misfortune alike. Angulimala throws down his sword and begins again. These figures are not just characters in stories. They are aspects of yourself. The awakening mind, the grieving heart, the empty boat, the equanimous observer, the one who can transform, all of these live within you. The stories resonate because they describe something true about the human condition, about your condition. You are already on the path. You have already taken steps toward acceptance. Even listening to these stories, even lying here in the darkness considering these teachings, is a kind of practice. It is not wasted. It matters. It adds to the momentum of your journey. Even if the progress is invisible, even if it unfolds over years rather than nights. Be patient with yourself. Be kind to yourself. Accept yourself as you would accept the cherry blossom, appreciating the beauty, honoring the impermanence, knowing that this moment, this version of you, will never come again. And now, let sleep come. Let the day release. Let acceptance carry you into the peace that passes understanding, the rest that restores, the silence that speaks. Tomorrow you will wake, and another day will begin. There will be new challenges and new opportunities for practice. There will be moments of forgetting and moments of remembering. There will be suffering and joy, loss and gain, the whole beautiful, terrible mixture that is human life. And through it all, these teachings will be with you. Touch the earth. Remember the mustard seed. Empty your boat. Put down what you no longer need to carry. Ask yourself, is this the first arrow or the second? Begin again with beginner's mind. Appreciate the falling petals. Know that change is always possible. Sleep well tonight. May you be at peace. May you be free from suffering. May you be happy. May you accept yourself exactly as you are. And if you have found value in this journey we have taken together, remember that there are many more stories to explore, many more teachings to contemplate, many more practices to discover. This channel offers a pathway into that deeper exploration. Consider subscribing so that when we meet again in the gentle darkness, you will be ready to continue the journey. For now, rest, let go, accept, and know that you are held, always, by something larger than you can imagine, something as ancient as the Buddha under his tree and as fresh as this very breath, this very moment, this very letting go into the peace that awaits you. The image of the river appears again and again in Buddhist thought. Life is like a river, the sages tell us. It flows constantly, never the same from one moment to the next. We cannot step into the same river twice. As the ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus said, and the Buddhists would add that we are not the same person stepping in. Everything flows. Everything changes. This is the great truth of impermanence that we have contemplated through the cherry blossoms. But the river offers another teaching as well, the teaching of non-resistance. Have you ever watched leaves floating on a stream? They do not fight the current. They do not struggle against the flow. They simply surrender to the water and are carried along, sometimes spinning in eddies, sometimes catching on rocks, but always eventually continuing downstream. This is a model for how we might move through life. Not passive, not without will or direction, but without the constant resistance that exhausts us. The leaf does not try to swim upstream. The leaf does not rage against the rocks. The leaf accepts the conditions of the river and moves with them, rather than against them. When we fight against the current of our lives, we tire ourselves out. We spend enormous energy trying to make things be other than they are. We push against circumstances that cannot be changed. We exhaust ourselves in futile struggles against reality. But when we accept the current, when we let go of the constant resistance, something shifts. We find that the river is actually carrying us somewhere. We find that there is a kind of intelligence in the flow, a wisdom that knows where we need to go even when we do not. This does not mean giving up all effort or direction. A leaf cannot choose its destination, but a human being can. We can use the current to help us reach our goals, working with the flow rather than against it. The skilled navigator reads the river, understands its patterns, and uses them to move in the desired direction. The key is knowing when to paddle and when to float, knowing when effort is called for and when surrender is the wiser choice. Knowing when to push and when to let go. So much of our suffering comes from pushing at the wrong moments, from fighting battles that cannot be won, from insisting that the river flow backward to suit our preferences. The teaching of the river is to relax that pushing, to trust the flow more, to recognize that we are being carried even when it feels like drowning. Tonight, as you rest, imagine yourself floating on a peaceful river. The water is warm and supportive. The current is gentle. Above you, stars wheel through the sky. You do not need to swim. You do not need to struggle. You can simply float, letting the river carry you toward rest, toward peace, toward the ocean of deep sleep that awaits downstream. Let go of the paddling. Let go of the steering. Let go of the constant effort to control where you are going. Just for tonight, just for these precious hours of rest, trust the river. It knows the way, the mind like sky. In the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, there is a beautiful meditation instruction that invites us to see our mind as being like the sky. Thoughts, emotions, sensations, all of these are like clouds passing through the sky. Sometimes the clouds are light and fluffy, pleasant to watch. Sometimes they are dark and heavy, threatening storms. Sometimes there are so many clouds that the sky seems completely obscured, but the sky itself remains unchanged. No matter how many clouds pass through, no matter how violent the storm, the sky is always there, vast and open and fundamentally undisturbed. The clouds come and go. The sky remains. This is a teaching about our true nature, about the awareness that underlies all our changing experiences. We tend to identify with the clouds, with our thoughts and emotions, with the storms of our mental life. We say, I am anxious, or I am sad, as if anxiety or sadness were who we are. But the teaching of the sky invites us to shift our identification. What if we are not the clouds, but the sky? What if anxiety and sadness and all the rest are just weather patterns passing through the vast open space of our awareness? This shift changes everything. When we identify as clouds, we are at the mercy of every passing storm. We are tossed about by every strong wind of emotion. But when we identify as sky, we can hold all of this with spacious acceptance. The clouds pass through us. They do not define us. They cannot harm the sky. This is not a denial of our experience. The clouds are real. The emotions are real. The sky teaching does not ask us to pretend we are not feeling what we are feeling. It simply invites us to hold those feelings in a larger context, to recognize that they are not the whole of who we are. Think of the worst emotional storm you have ever weathered. The grief, the fear, the rage, whatever it was. It felt overwhelming at the time, didn't it? It felt like it would never end. It felt like you might be destroyed by it. And yet here you are. You survived. The storm passed. And the sky of your awareness is still here, still holding space for whatever arises now. This is evidence of your fundamental okayness, your underlying stability, your sky nature that no cloud can permanently obscure. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, you might practice this sky meditation. Let your awareness expand. Instead of being caught up in your thoughts, recognize them as clouds passing through. Instead of being tossed by your emotions, see them as weather moving across the open sky. You do not need to push the clouds away. The sky does not fight with clouds. You do not need to hold on to pleasant experiences. The sky does not cling to beautiful sunsets. You simply rest as awareness itself, vast and open, watching the play of experience without being lost in it. This is acceptance at its deepest level. Accepting not just this or that particular circumstance, but accepting the nature of mind itself, the way thoughts and emotions arise and pass, the way experience is always changing, the way nothing that moves through awareness can ever damage the awareness itself. Rest in the sky tonight. Let the clouds drift. Let the storms exhaust themselves. Your true nature, the aware and open space that you are, remains untouched, at peace, at home in itself. The gift of ordinary moments. We have spoken of dramatic stories tonight, of battles with demons and grieving mothers and murderers who became saints. But there is another teaching in the Buddhist tradition that might be the most important of all, the teaching about ordinary moments. So much of our lives is spent waiting for something special to happen. We look forward to vacations, holidays, celebrations, achievements. We tell ourselves that we will be happy when this happens, when that comes together, when we finally arrive at some longed-for destination. But Zen masters have always pointed out that enlightenment is not somewhere else. It is here. It is now. It is in the washing of dishes and the folding of laundry and the countless small moments that make up a human life. One famous Zen saying puts it this way: before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Nothing changes, and everything changes. The enlightened person still does the same ordinary tasks as everyone else, but they do them with full presence, with acceptance, with appreciation for the simple miracle of being alive. There is a story of a student who went to a Zen master and asked for teaching. The master said, "Have you eaten your breakfast?" The student said yes. The master said, "Then wash your bowl." That was the whole teaching. Wash your bowl. Do the next thing that needs to be done. Be present to the ordinary task at hand. Do not get lost in seeking special experiences or extraordinary states. The extraordinary is hidden within the ordinary, waiting to be discovered by those who pay attention. Tonight, as you lie here, there is nothing special happening. You are simply a person resting at the end of a day, preparing for sleep, doing what billions of humans have done for hundreds of thousands of years. There are no fireworks. There are no peak experiences. Just the gentle rising and falling of your breath, the quiet darkness, the softness of wherever you are resting. And yet, is this not extraordinary? The fact that you exist at all, that consciousness has somehow emerged in this universe, that you are able to hear these words and contemplate their meaning? The sheer improbability of your existence, traced back through countless generations, through billions of years of evolution, through the formation of stars that created the elements of your body. Everything ordinary is also extraordinary when we look closely enough. Everything mundane is also miraculous. The acceptance that Buddhist teaching points toward includes accepting the ordinary as enough, recognizing that we do not need special circumstances to find peace, that this moment, exactly as it is the doorway. You do not need to be doing anything important right now. You do not need to be achieving or accomplishing or making progress. You are simply resting, and that is enough. That is more than enough. That is exactly what this moment calls for. Accept the ordinariness of tonight. Accept the plain fact of being tired and needing sleep. Accept the unremarkable nature of this experience, and in that acceptance, notice how remarkable it actually is. Notice the consciousness that is aware of being ordinary. Notice the awareness that recognizes the need for rest. Notice the being that can hear these words and be affected by them. Ordinary mind is the way, the masters say, not some special elevated state, not some extraordinary achievement. Just this, just here, just now, chopping wood and carrying water and washing bowls and lying down to sleep. Let the ordinary hold you tonight. Let the regular rhythm of breath and heartbeat be your lullaby. Let the simple darkness be enough. In the acceptance of the ordinary, peace is found. Before we conclude our time together tonight, there is one more aspect of Buddhist teaching worth contemplating: the importance of Sangha, or spiritual community. The Buddha identified 3 refuges, 3 sources of support for those walking the path: the Buddha himself, as teacher and exemplar; the Dharma, the teaching; and the Sangha, the community of practitioners. We have focused tonight on the Dharma, on the stories and teachings that illuminate the practice of acceptance. But the Sangha, the community, is equally important. We are not meant to walk this path alone. When Kisa Gautami went from house to house seeking the mustard seed, she was, without knowing it, encountering the Sangha, the community of those who had also suffered loss. Each household she visited became her teacher, showing her that grief was universal, that she was not alone in her pain. When the villagers eventually came to accept Angulimala, they formed a Sangha with him, a community willing to see his transformation and support his new life. Without that eventual acceptance, his redemption would have remained incomplete. Even now, as you listen to these words, you are part of a Sangha of sorts. There are others listening to this same recording, contemplating these same teachings, struggling with the same challenges of acceptance that you face. You cannot see them, but they are there. Across time zones and continents, in different circumstances and stages of life, fellow seekers are resting with these same words, supported by the same wisdom. This is the power of recorded teachings. The Buddha's original Sangha was limited to those who could physically travel to hear him speak. But through the technology of writing, and now recording, the Sangha extends across millennia and around the globe. You are connected to everyone who has ever contemplated these stories, who has ever practiced these teachings, who has ever sought the peace of acceptance. Let this connection comfort you. You are not alone in your struggles. You are not alone in your doubts. You are not alone in the darkness of this night. Countless beings have walked this path before you, and countless more will walk it after. You are part of something larger than yourself, a community of practice that spans time and space. And in your own life, there may be people who can serve as Sangha for you, friends who share your interest in these teachings, family members who support your growth even if they don't understand it, teachers, writers, podcasters, creators who offer guidance along the way. The Buddhist tradition encourages us to seek out such companionship, not because we cannot practice alone, but because the path is easier with support. We encourage each other. We hold each other accountable. We remind each other of the teachings when we forget. We celebrate each other's breakthroughs and comfort each other in the difficult times. As you drift towards sleep tonight, you might send a silent blessing to your Sangha, seen and unseen, to those who have helped you on your path, to those who will help you in the future, to all beings everywhere who are seeking peace, seeking acceptance, seeking the end of suffering. May we all be well. May we all be happy. May we all find the acceptance that brings peace. This traditional Buddhist aspiration, called metta or loving kindness, extends our practice beyond ourselves. We practice not just for our own benefit, but for the benefit of all beings. We seek acceptance not just so we can be at peace, but so we can radiate that peace outward, contributing to the healing of the world. You are part of that healing. Every moment of acceptance you cultivate sends ripples outward. Every time you choose not to shoot the second arrow, you reduce the suffering in the world by one small increment. Every time you let go of resistance and float with the river, you demonstrate that another way is possible. This matters. You matter. Your practice matters. Let this knowing accompany you into sleep. You are doing important work, even in rest. You are healing yourself, and through yourself, you are helping to heal the world. The Sangha surrounds you. The Dharma guides you. The Buddha nature within you awakens a little more each day. Sleep well, dear traveler. The path continues tomorrow. For now, rest. Let us close with a simple practice that you can carry with you beyond tonight. Wherever you are, whatever position you have found, let your body settle more deeply. Feel the places where you are supported, whether by a bed, a couch, a floor. Let yourself be held by that support. You do not need to hold yourself up right now. You can let go and be held. Now bring your attention to your breathing, not trying to change it, not trying to breathe in any particular way, just noticing the breath coming in, the breath going out, the slight pause between, the rhythm that has been with you since the moment of your birth and will be with you until the moment of your death. This breath is acceptance in action. You do not control it, not really. It happens by itself, a gift of the body's wisdom. And you accept it over and over, breath after breath, trusting that the next breath will come, trusting that your body knows what to do. Now, as you breathe in, silently say to yourself, accepting this moment. As you breathe out, silently say, letting go, accepting this moment, letting go, accepting this moment, letting go. Continue with this rhythm. Each inhale, an acceptance of what is. Each exhale, a release of what no longer serves. If your mind wanders, that is fine. That is normal. That is part of being human. Simply notice where it went and gently bring it back. Accepting this moment. Letting go. You do not need to accept everything about your life right now. You do not need to solve all your problems or heal all your wounds. You only need to accept this breath, this moment, this inhale, this exhale. Acceptance is a practice, not a destination. You will not arrive at some final acceptance and be done, but you can practice breath by breath, moment by moment, night by night. And in that practice, over time, something shifts. The muscles of resistance begin to soften. The grip of control begins to relax. Peace becomes a little more accessible, a little more natural. Keep breathing. Keep accepting. Keep letting go. The stories we have shared tonight will continue to work in you as you sleep. They do not need your conscious attention anymore. They are seeds planted in the soil of your unconscious, germinating in the darkness, preparing to sprout when the time is right. Trust this process. Trust the wisdom of these ancient teachings. Trust your own capacity to heal, to grow, to transform. Trust the Sangha that surrounds you, seen and unseen. Trust the Dharma that guides you. Trust the Buddha nature within you that already knows how to be at peace. Accepting this moment. Letting go. One more time, take a deep breath in, accepting completely, fully, without reservation. And let it go, releasing everything, holding nothing back. And now, simply rest. The meditation is complete. The words can fade. Sleep is close. May you be peaceful. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. May you find acceptance. Good night. We hope this journey through Buddhist stories of acceptance has brought you peace tonight. If this content resonates with you, please consider subscribing to this channel and giving this video a like. Your support helps us continue creating calming content to help you find rest and relaxation. Sweet dreams, and remember, acceptance is always available to you, in every breath, in every moment. The path is under your feet. You have already begun. Until next time, sleep well. Before our breathing meditation, let us contemplate one more image from the Buddhist tradition, an image that has inspired practitioners for millennia and speaks directly to the practice of acceptance. The lotus flower grows in muddy water. Its roots reach down into the murk and slime at the bottom of ponds and rivers. It pushes up through darkness, through debris, through all the decomposing matter that settles at the bottom of still waters. And yet, when the lotus finally breaks the surface and opens its petals to the sun, it is pristine. It is beautiful beyond description. The mud that nourished it cannot stain it. The darkness through which it grew cannot diminish its radiance. This is why the lotus is the primary symbol of enlightenment in Buddhism. It represents the possibility of purity arising from impurity, of light emerging from darkness, of awakening occurring not despite our difficulties, but somehow through them. The Buddha is often depicted sitting on a lotus throne. Bodhisattvas hold lotus flowers in their hands. Temple architects place lotus motifs throughout their designs. Everywhere you look in Buddhist art and architecture, the lotus appears, reminding practitioners that the path to enlightenment does not require escaping the muddy waters of human existence. We are all growing through mud. Our lives are filled with difficulty, confusion, pain, loss, disappointment. We make mistakes. We suffer consequences. We struggle in darkness, wondering if we will ever reach the light. The Lotus teaching says, this is exactly where you need to be. The mud is not preventing your growth. The mud is feeding your growth. Without the nutrients in that dark water, the lotus could not rise. Without the challenges in your life, you could not develop the wisdom and compassion that are the marks of awakening. This is a profound form of acceptance. Accepting not just that difficulty exists, but that difficulty is serving a purpose. Accepting not just that darkness is present, but that darkness is necessary for the journey you are making. Accepting that exactly where you are, in the midst of whatever challenges you face, is the right place to be. The lotus does not complain about the mud. It does not wish it had been born in clear water. It does not compare itself to flowers growing in easier conditions. It simply reaches toward the light, using whatever it finds as nourishment for its growth. Can you adopt the attitude of the lotus tonight? Can you accept that the difficulties of your life, past and present, are the mud from which your enlightenment is growing? Can you see your struggles not as obstacles to peace, but as the very material from which peace is being forged? This does not mean pretending that difficulty is pleasant. The mud is still mud, but it means recognizing that nothing is wasted on the spiritual path. Every experience, no matter how dark, contains the potential for awakening. Every challenge, no matter how overwhelming, can become food for growth. The lotus blooms. Despite everything, the lotus blooms. And so can you. The 3 marks of existence. Throughout tonight's journey, we have been circling around 3 fundamental characteristics that the Buddha identified as universal to all conditioned experience. These are sometimes called the 3 marks of existence, and understanding them is central to the practice of acceptance. The first mark is impermanence, which we explored through the cherry blossoms. Everything that arises also passes away. Nothing lasts. This is not pessimism, but simple observation. And when we deeply accept impermanence, we stop clinging so tightly to things that cannot be held. The second mark is suffering, or more accurately, dissatisfaction. Because things are impermanent, because we cannot hold on to what we love or push away what we dislike, there is an inherent unease in our experience. The 4 Noble Truths elaborate this teaching, but acceptance transforms our relationship to suffering. We stop adding the second arrow. We stop fighting against the inevitable. The third mark is often translated as non-self or no self. This is the most subtle and challenging of the 3. It does not mean that you do not exist, but rather that what you take yourself to be, the fixed, solid, separate self, is not as real as it seems. When examined closely, the self turns out to be a collection of changing processes rather than a permanent entity. This third mark is relevant to acceptance because so much of our resistance comes from the defense of self. We take things personally. We feel threatened by challenges to our identity. We fight to protect and enhance our sense of who we are. But if the self is not as solid as we imagine, if it is more like a river than a rock, then what is there to defend? The insults and injuries that trouble us so much are striking at a phantom. The achievements and acquisitions we seek to shore up our identity are building on sand. When we glimpse this truth, even briefly, a great relaxation becomes possible. We don't have to work so hard to protect something that was never in danger. We don't have to accumulate so desperately to fill a void that cannot be filled. We can simply be, without the constant project of self-improvement and self-defense. This is not a teaching to grasp intellectually, but to discover experientially. The meditation practices of Buddhism are designed to reveal the insubstantial nature of what we take ourselves to be. through watching thoughts arise and pass, through observing emotions come and go, through seeing how every experience flows into the next without finding any permanent observer, we begin to loosen our identification with the self. And in that loosening, acceptance becomes natural. We accept impermanence because we see that we are impermanent. We accept suffering because we see that clinging creates suffering. We accept life as it is because we no longer have a fixed self that needs life to be a particular way. This is deep water, and we need not swim to the bottom tonight. But the lotus grows in deep water, and perhaps these seeds of teaching will continue to grow in you as you sleep, returning to the breath. And so we return, as we always return in meditation practice, to the simplest and most immediate reality, the breath. The breath does not require acceptance. It simply happens. It is already accepted, already allowed, already flowing in and out whether you pay attention to it or not. But when you bring attention to the breath, something shifts. The automatic becomes conscious. The unconscious pattern becomes a practice. The simple act of breathing becomes a teacher. Notice how the breath accepts whatever arises. When you are anxious, the breath adjusts. When you are calm, the breath reflects that calm. When you are falling asleep, the breath naturally slows and deepens. There is no judgment in the breath, no resistance, no insistence that things be different than they are. Can you breathe like that? Can you let your whole being be as accepting as your breath? The in-breath accepts the air. It does not ask whether the air is good enough, whether it deserves this particular breath, whether conditions are optimal. It simply receives what is offered. The out-breath releases completely. It does not hold back, does not cling to the carbon dioxide, does not fear the emptiness that follows release. It simply lets go, trusting that the next breath will come. This is the model for acceptance. Receive fully. Release completely. Trust the process. Repeat. You have been breathing all day, all your life, without thinking about it. Tonight, for these last few moments of wakefulness, let your breathing be a conscious practice of acceptance. Each breath in says yes to this moment. Each breath out says I release whatever I no longer need. Yes, release. Yes, release. Yes, release. The words can fade now. The concepts can dissolve. The stories can settle into the deep soil of memory and dream. What remains is this: breathing in, breathing out, accepting, releasing, trusting, resting. You have done well tonight. You have listened. You have contemplated. You have let these ancient teachings touch your heart. Now let them do their work while you sleep. The Buddha found enlightenment while sitting under a tree, watching the morning star appear. Perhaps tonight, while you rest under the stars you cannot see, while dreams come and go like clouds across the sky of your awareness, perhaps a small enlightenment will find you too. A moment of acceptance, a release of burden, a peace that stays with you into the morning. Or perhaps you will simply sleep and wake rested, and that is enough. That is more than enough. That is everything. Accept this moment. Let go. Trust. Sleep now. The lotus blooms in darkness, and so do you.